We have Alex with us.
If you decide to come into permanent makeup as a hobby,
my golden rule is no talking while tattooing.
I'm not that type of person. It's hard.
What would you say, Alex, is one of your kind of biggest challenges?
I'm gonna go full naked here and say that
all of a sudden there was this Alex who was very opinionated,
because people kept asking me, where have you been in all this time? And I was
what do you mean you've had hard conversations? People have messaged you because you might have been challenging their particular products or lines.
That and also messages like completely unsolicited advice.
We can talk brands because that's what people want to know.
Only for hair strokes.
What advice did you feel that you didn't get that you would give to someone else?
Don't fall for the image. I don't think it was as controversial as people expect me to be.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Permanent Makeup Podcast. We have some super exciting news to announce, and that is that we are now sponsored by the UK leading permanent makeup supplier, Killer Beauty. If you enter the PMU Podcast at checkout, you get 10% off your order. Enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of the PMU Podcast with myself, Tamara Bigden and Karina Kalori. And today we have Alex with us. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will know who you are, but just in case they don't, if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe some fun facts, how you got into permanent makeup, how long you've been doing it, what you like, all of that good stuff.
Hi, thank you so much, Tamara and Karina, for having me. I was very excited because I've been following Karina for ages, and we actually only met recently in person, thanks to all of these great conferences and events that have been going on in the UK this year. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I love talking, so everybody knows that. My full name is Alexandra Mechenici. It sounds Italian, but I'm not Italian. I'm from Romania. And my husband and I moved here to the UK roughly around 10 years ago. Which was a really big change for us, but we were already together, so we came together, and that made things a little bit easier. And I wasn't doing permanent makeup back then. I think that's kind of when I also started, because before moving from Romania to here, I decided to kind of explore. I used to work in a completely different industry. I used to work in the corporate world. I know all about transitioning from the corporate world, from wearing high heel and smart dresses and suits to work, to then moving into scrubs and trainers. So at that time, I was kind of exploring what if I move to the UK and I won't like the job because I came with the job. So what if I won't like it, or what if I want to explore different things since it's such a new beginning? So I had already had my brows tattooed back then. And when I did have my brows tattooed, I would say, oh my God, this is so incredible. This is so amazing. I wish I would be able to do this, because it's a transformation, isn't it? It's immediate. It's not something that takes a long time. And I decided back then, before moving here, to train in this, to learn this skill, just in case, might be useful later. But at the same time, I also did a baker's course because I was planning to open my own bakery, which I'm still good at, by the way. And so I did these two courses, but then we moved here and I had a job in Network Rail. I used to commute to London every day. That was about 1.5 years of my UK life. And well, in a nutshell, I hated it. I did actually hate it. I just couldn't fit in. And it was so exhausting because I was still doing the same thing that I decided I didn't want to do anymore back in Romania. I wanted a better life. I wanted to live more and work less. And I ended up doing the same thing here. So then I decided to start exploring some of these so-called new hobbies. And I tried with baking, but you have to taste everything that you bake, and you gain a lot of weight, and it's hard for me not to taste it because I need to experience it. So I thought this one was a better idea. I didn't feel fully confident, like a lot of us. When I did my basic training, it was one of those courses, learn it all in 3-4 days. I soon after realized I did a couple of models, amongst which one of my first was my mum. Never ever do your first few models someone that you have to look at every day, because that's not a smart decision.
No, I can definitely agree with you there. Anybody I touch, friends or family, if I have to see them often, well, back
exactly.
now I don't mind. But back in the day, it was like, yeah, no, don't come to me. Go to someone else.
You were smarter than me. So yeah, I realized soon after that I still wasn't ready. And I decided to take more courses, and I went all over the place. Like being European, I went to, I was following artists that attracted me from other countries as well, not necessarily here. It's only really late in my career that I decided to do a course here in the UK. So I basically flew in other parts of Europe to do that. And I was still working in my corporate job and trying to do this, and I was trying to juggle, and then I asked for flexible working, and that didn't work either. And back in the day, that's roughly around, let's say maybe 9.5 years ago, because soon after we moved here, I decided that I wanted to explore this more. Beauty salons were really busy, not like now, unfortunately, when things are really hard now, especially after COVID. And I couldn't find a room that was dedicated to me. So I had rented a couple of rooms in different salons. I used to confuse bookings. Clients went to one salon, I was in a different salon. It was like, oh no. And I realized that I couldn't grow. And this is something that I tell my students as well nowadays. If you decide to come into permanent makeup as a hobby, or that you're going to do this once or twice a week, you're not going to be great or good fast enough, and you will soon lose confidence in the skill that you've.
Is this all of your students, including beginners and masterclass students as well, that you say this
to? And masterclass students, because there's one thing to come and learn. I have had students that message me 6 months after masterclass saying, "Oh, Alex, unfortunately, after the class, I didn't, jump on to do that specific technique immediately. And then as time went by, I didn't book it. And now I really don't feel confident in doing it anymore. So could I come again, at least to just watch you, or if not, to do a model?" And that's the thing. And I realized back then, I did realize the same thing, that if I don't do this more, then I'll have that frustration and probably lose confidence. And especially all that money invested in my other courses. I remember my husband saying, "Are you ever going to make any money from this, or are you just pouring money into it?"
It's something that
little did he know.
Yeah, we previously discussed on this podcast about these schools selling this 6-figure income and start making this amount every day. All you've got to do is X amount of clients. And I'm like, first and foremost, who has time to do 5 new sets of brows a day, 7 days a week? And
how do you book them in?
I commend you if you do, trust me. And yeah, of course, if you're doing 5 sets or 4 sets of brows a day, 7 days a week, of course you're going to make that 6-figure income, but you're never going to be able to do that straight away. Like, it's one of my biggest pet peeves, and loads of people know this because they send me these people's stories and I'm like, they should be shot.
Yeah.
But they should be told, like, what you're doing is daylight robbery. Stop trying to trick people into this foolishness. So sorry, vent over.
I suppose it started years ago. If you remember, when, especially in the UK, we only had the big academy names that were trying to push this new kind of service onto beauty therapists. And people didn't know what it was. So I think it probably started back then, where they were trying to, let's see, how do we advertise it? How do we sell it as a service? How do we convince people to learn this and offer it to their clients? But we moved on since then, like way. We're talking about dinosaur era, because I do consider myself one of the dinosaurs. But yeah, I totally get it. I don't like when they do that hard selling.
No. And I don't
No.
like seeing people's luxurious lifestyles on the internet either. You know, when people want to put up their pictures of their Porsches and Lamborghinis, I'm like, where's mine? I'm not sure if I wanted to. I'd love
even
to.
if I had, I don't think I would post it. It's just how I
No.
am. I think that that's my, that's my life. That's my bit. Like if I have something, I don't need to shove it in your face.
No.
And
And
it's
like,
also really interesting because sometimes you find, like for me, when I post personal posts, I definitely get a lot more engagement and everyone
Yes.
wants to know about your life. But I think, yeah, there's that fine line between what clients know and what they don't know.
But I think, like you said, exactly like you said, Tamara, I think it's also putting some false expectations out there. Oh, if I do this, then I'm going to become that. That's for beginners. And for those already doing it, it's creating this false illusion that, oh, well, actually it's affecting their confidence. They're thinking, just like Karina said, well, where's mine? And what am I doing wrong? And why am I not there where you are? Because we seem to be doing the same thing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And ultimately, by posting those things as well, it's another method of fooling people or tricking people into your line of work, because then they're paying for that lifestyle by learning from you. So you're feeding that person's luxurious lifestyle, but actually not doing or getting there yourself, because you know the figures that they're telling you aren't realistic. So
exactly. And
I think
I've
it's
had
a scenario, isn't it?
say that again.
It's best case scenario, which is obviously in an ideal world, we'd all be loving to earn that sort of money. But like for me, maximum new clients I'll ever do a day is 2. And that's just personal preference. And really, I only like to do 1, just because it's a lot of concentration. And I feel like my work is better if I do 1. Yeah. Because to be sat there for that long, it is, you get to the end and you're like, oh, that took a long time.
It's not just that, but it's customer service. You have to be really interested and give them everything you've got, basically, so that they trust you and they have full confidence in you. And at the end of it, you're like, okay, what's next?
Social exhaustion as well, having to talk to clients for that long. For me, I get to the end and I'm like, oh, I just want to sit in a room of silence now.
I like these reels now that are really popular to put the Scotch tape on your clients.
I mean, my golden rule is no talking while tattooing. So I never feel exhausted, because I made that mistake when I used to do lashes and clients used to want a gas bag, and it always took me longer because their faces always moved. And then I would be so drained at the end of an appointment. So now I'm like, no talking while tattooing. Okay, and go. And they just like zip. I love it. Okay.
That's really good. But you're, I'm not that type of person. It's hard for me to.
Oh my God, really? I literally turn the music up and I'm just like, right, relax. No talking. Yeah, literally. It's my favorite thing to do. So,
and I'm going to do the same. I've heard of artists putting in their AirPods and listening to podcasts. So I might try it.
Yeah, literally. I just say to people, if you've got any musical preferences, if not, if you like the music today, I'll take full responsibility for it. And if you don't, we'll blame it on Spotify discovery. But sometimes Spotify throws out those like really
weird ones.
I'm like, oh my God, you're embarrassing me right now.
I'm not. I don't listen to such music. That's not mine.
I promise, it's not me. It's my stepson. I promise.
I know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we have progressed a lot. We have moved on in the industry, and while in other countries that sort of marketing is still very popular. Maybe in countries where marketing was invented, we know what those countries are. But I don't think it is popular here. I think a lot of people are already rolling their eyes and thinking, oh, okay, here we go with another one. So I'm hoping that it will die down soon. But in a short story, I understood that I couldn't be doing both. So I quit my other job, and that was really scary because it was a stable income, and I used to work in network rail, and it's really hard to get into that company. And people thought I was crazy. They're like, what? You could retire from this company. Why would you leave? But I was pretty fortunate that my husband was very supportive, and we didn't have any kids back then, so it was easier for me to take that decision. And then, like you said, I worked 6 days a week, morning till evening, to build it up.
So since 9 years, have you always done all of the different treatments, or did you start with one and then build to the others?
I started with predominantly brows, powder brows, ombre brows. I was taught hair strokes, but I soon gave it up because that wasn't, obviously you can't learn it, especially as a beginner. I still don't teach it as a beginner to a beginner. I don't think it's possible unless they only focus on that skill and that only. But it's still quite hard for beginners. So I gave that up and I was focusing on brows. And then slowly, I started, doing more classes in lips, doing more classes in eyeliner. But here's the thing, 9 or 10 years ago, it wasn't, there was a general lack of information. The level of education was really poor. Coming from a completely different background, I understood that. I suppose I saw it with different eyes. And I thought, why is the level of education so poor in this when the level of responsibility is really high? Like, we're tattooing people's faces, whether it's called semi-permanent or permanent, or call it as you wish. You can affect someone's confidence to the good, to the better, or really sunk it. And I promised myself that if one day I feel confident enough to teach other people, that I will help others not be in the same situation that I was in. And having spoken to other artists back then, it was quite generally, I think it was spread everywhere. You had really big names that if you'd ask questions, no one would say anything, or you'd get a bitchy reply back saying, oh, your trainer should tell you this, go to them. Or obviously, or completely ignore. And it just, you didn't know who to ask. There were no Facebook forums, there was no support groups, no, nothing like that. So we learned the hard way, really hard. How long have you been doing it?
So I've been doing it since 2016. So nearly, I always say 8 years, but it's just coming up to 8 years. And Tamara?
I have been doing it now for 4.5.
Yeah, so I reckon, I mean, you've seen this, a part of it, because only in the last maybe, 2-3 years, or let's say roughly around COVID time, is when it really started booming up with more helpful forums and support groups and so on.
I think that's also because a lot of people, me being one of them during COVID, we designed online courses. So it was actually, we could then see how much easier it was to create online content that allowed others to learn, but also it got more engagement, which then led to more followers, which then led to more bookings, sadly. But, that's how we then will get better. The more we do, the better we get. So I think that's a good point. Actually, COVID definitely helped with the online educational side of things, and artists being a bit more open and willing to share what they did, methods, needles, pigments, etc.
That's when I definitely started noticing it more, because I have always done this. I have always shared. I have always been, free with support and advice and everything. But during COVID, I think people just had us in our industry, not other people, but in our industry, we just had more time to waste or to spend on social media. And they then started noticing exactly what you're saying, that it boosts engagement and followers and so on. So I think now it's a very spread practice.
Do you have an online course, Alex?
I do have a couple, and soon launching another couple. I'm a really bad seller, and my husband says this all the time. I don't know how to sell. I feel as if, if people want to buy it, they will ask me, I'll give them the link, but I'm not a very hardcore seller. I think that's one of my downfalls. But I do have a couple of online courses for ombre, for nano, and soon launching pigmentology. I think that's the one that's really, really going to be popular. So yeah, I do have, but yeah.
So in terms of a typical day or week in your life, Tamara touched on it. She'd only really put in 2 clients a day if they were new sets. I myself am the same. If it's new sets, it'll only be a maximum of 2. I only do brows and lips, but you do brows, eyeliner, teaching, removal, everything. So what would a typical week in your life look like?
Okay, I'm going to say it out loud. I don't do as many clients anymore because I was getting really frustrated. My true passion is teaching. And I think up until about a year ago, I was in a place where I felt like a hamster on a wheel. I felt like there was no start and stop. It was all rolling over. I was really busy with clients and appointments, but I was getting busier with training as well, but I didn't have time or the energy to fit everyone in. And it was just, I remember telling my husband, I feel stuck. And he said, what do you love more? And I said, well, I love teaching more, which I didn't know about myself until I actually started doing it. And he said, well, then why don't you do that more? And I told him that I feel stuck and why. And he said, I'm not saying stop taking bookings, but let's up your prices really high. So then you'll do less in a way. And that did happen. It was really scary. Oh my God, it was really scary to increase my prices. I thought I would lose that side of the business completely. But I didn't. I just, in a way, kind of make the same money, but I work less now in terms of clients. And so I am the most expensive in my area. So a week typically for me looks about, I'd say maybe a day and a half of doing clients as in procedures. Then another half a day doing removal, because that's really, really getting popular. And I don't even advertise it. It's nowhere. It's not on my website. It's not, people just come. They just hear about it. So I'm doing that a lot as well. And the rest is spent on teaching, because now I do about 2 or 3 classes a month. I do very small groups, so I do it more often. And then gym. Oh my God. I'm in this kind of health thing at the moment, 3 times a week, gym, plus cardio, plus 10,000 steps a day. It's exhausting. And of course, the motherhood duty, which is that full on, that's 24 hours. But what helps is that my husband is in this with me, in the business, in everything. That is so helpful. You have no idea. I mean, I don't know if your husband works with you, but it's incredibly helpful.
I mean, we've tried. If you've ever watched my live mapping that I got him to film of me doing his sister, I could have shot him. He was that bad with the camera. I was just like, hey, you're literally...
How are you so bad?
I'm like, you're filming up her nostrils. Like, give your sister some dignity. It killed me. So yeah, my husband is not part of the business. As much as he does try to help, he just helps me in the house and with our daughter, but definitely not with the business.
Well, that's still super, super important anyway, because he helps with that. That's more than half of the of our life. Yeah, because then you have a little bit more time.
Tamara is my right-hand girl. Like, if it wasn't for Tamara, she's my sounding board. We literally talk every day. The voice notes that we send back and forth every day, and it's just about random stuff. Not always about PMU. I'd say that Tamara is my work husband.
Oh, that's amazing. It's nice to have a work husband. That's different to your husband.
Yeah. I suppose a work wife would make more sense, right?
Yeah. It would. Yeah, that's what a week looks like. It's more focused. I'd say my business is now about 70% teaching, 30% clients. And I don't regret it. And here's why. Because I'm at a stage in my permanent makeup career where I don't want to compromise anymore. And clients that pay want certain things. And sometimes it's about compromising. It's about giving them what they want because they are the ones that pay, right? Yeah. And I may not agree to everything that they want. And I feel like I have to compromise a lot, especially where I live in Essex. We all know how people like their brows here. And it makes me feel like I resent what I'm doing, when I have to compromise as much, because I'm doing something that I don't particularly enjoy anymore. So every now and then I'll book myself a couple of models where I can do whatever I want. Beautiful, soft, natural looking work. And then, I have my other clients who, let's say half of them want natural and soft, and the other half not so natural and soft. I think that's what really got me frustrated a while ago, when I decided to reduce that side of the business a bit more. But I'm not losing my touch. I still do loads of models during classes.
I mean, the way that you are on your stories, I would never have presumed that you did less clients. I definitely still think that you did exactly the same amount. So you're definitely exceeding what I would ever have thought anyways.
I absolutely love teaching, and that's what I want to focus on. It's actually something that I've been thinking when I quit permanent makeup, because let's be honest, when I'm a true dinosaur, who'll want to come back to me? There's the younger ones that are coming, in full force. I think I'm going to go into teaching. That's how much I love it.
Would you say that that's your biggest accomplishment, Alex, is sort of getting into teaching?
Yes, finding my calling, because I never knew. You know how some people know, I want to be a doctor, I want to be, whether they're pushed a little bit by their parents or they just know. I never knew. I have a bachelor in finance, which I never practiced because I worked in sales and then procurement and then marketing and then sales and procurement. And I never really knew my calling. And when I discovered permanent makeup, I thought, oh, this was my calling. But then when I discovered teaching permanent makeup, I thought, no. That's just the subject, the topic. That's my calling. And I love it. And people say I'm really good at it. So it must be true.
I know, I even messaged you ages ago, didn't I? And said, Alex, are you teaching laser removal yet? And you were like, no. And I was like, I'm just going to have to find another reason to come and train with you, because I've only heard great stuff about your training. So yeah, I'm just going to have to find an excuse to spend a couple grand on you, Alex. I mean, it's not hard.
I don't think you need to. Some people say, oh, can I just come and spend the day with you and pick your brains? And yeah, sure, come and we'll have a really, like a long day chat, and we'll just talk about everything. That's interesting. But that's a typical week for me. Less clients, more teaching, and motherhood. It's getting more and more intense. The more Adam grows, the more demanding they will be. So,
how old is Adam now?
He's 5.
Oh, yeah.
He's 5. But they will grow. I see it. My husband has another son as well, who's 13. So I can resonate. Yeah, we have an older one and a smaller
finding
one.
things for them both to do as well, because Harper, who's 2, and Theo, who's 12, like they're into such different things. So I can imagine that
Very
Adam,
different.
your stepson, are the same. Like, it's like, okay, well, one wants to go and see dinosaurs and one wants to go and play football or go with his mates.
Exactly. And the other one is bored, and so I can relate. But we'll get there. I'm sure that we'll get there. I currently love how the business is spread, like kind of the ratio.
It sounds like a really good balance.
Hopefully. Sorry to interrupt. I still need to learn how to work smarter. I think the future is online, and that is where this is heading.
I think me and Karina, we have that chat quite often, don't we, about sort of work-life balance, because you can kind of get caught up, and before you know it, it's a week that's gone by, and 2 weeks, and 3 weeks, and there's friends and family that you haven't seen for weeks, and sometimes you don't even realize that you haven't seen them for a month, and it's like, wow, where's that time gone? Oh yeah, I've been working every single day. Because you kind of feel, I don't know, especially when you've built up a rapport with the clients over the years, you feel like you want to get them in when they want to come in, and you've sort of had that loyalty with them. So it's tricky to find that balance, and it's good that you have managed to find it, Alex, because it probably makes your life a whole lot easier now. Which
I know how it sounds, but I'm not saying I'm that big that I don't want to do clients anymore. No, because it does keep, it keeps me up on my toes, and I don't want to lose that side of the business. But it's not about being big. It's about, like you said, about that balance and finding what is exhausting and what isn't, what takes a lot from you.
But also, I think it is your passion with teaching and the industry are great for this industry. And I would definitely say that we need more people like you who are teaching others, because I, for one, know that there's a lot of trainers out there that are not doing this for the right reasons or training people for the right reasons. So yeah, I think if we could have you and duplicate you, then that would be great.
I know. I mean, we all know the artists that learn today and then 6 months later they're already teaching. Because don't you get this as well? You get clients that come in and say, "Oh, I had to book an appointment with you because you're the best at it and you also teach other people." And I look at them and I think that shouldn't be a benchmark, because you don't know how easy it is in this country to teach, to start teaching a skill. It's so easy. And they see you as this high regard, you know, they keep you at this high regard, but actually it's really easy.
I mean,
a lot of people have seen that.
Yeah, I didn't learn here in the UK when I initially started cosmetic tattoo, and I actually learned in Australia, and it's a lot harder. Well, it was 8 years ago. I'm not sure what it's like now, but it was a lot harder back then to learn and become an accredited body. And I came back to the UK and I was like, oh my God, like, what do you mean you can learn in a day? Like, yeah, I was pretty shocked by the standards here in the UK. I mean, I've become more used to them. And obviously I do believe that the standards are getting better, but I also think people are getting wiser. But like, you know, people want things like yesterday, like my beginner's course, you can't do it overnight. You can't do it in a week. Like I asked for case studies, I asked for pre-learning, I asked for practice, I asked for you to come and attend days at different weeks, so it gives you time to go away and learn. People don't want to do that. You know, they want to learn like tomorrow and go out and practice. And that's because you do that, but then I'm not the right teacher for you, because that's not what I want to bring into this industry.
How many times have you been told by a beginner, I didn't think it would be this hard?
Every time.
Like, I just thought, how hard could it be to draw a couple of eyebrows and then tattoo them? They don't understand. And then they come into it and their mind is blown and they think, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And actually, a lot of people do give up somewhere along the process. They do give up. And this is one of the stories that has been on my mind recently. I've had a few clients convert into being my students. And knowing a little bit, like Tamara said, you build a rapport with them. So you already know a little bit of their life. And because we're also therapists, aren't we? When they come to their appointments. And I asked one of them in particular, I said, do you think you'll be able to manage this with 4 children and a household? And I mean, I knew she didn't have any other job. And she said, yeah, like how hard could it be? But then when you have 4 kids, you know, they get ill. They never get ill just one. It all happens at the same time. And it's been almost a year and she still hasn't finished. And I have to have a conversation with her and say, you're either going to do it or, because I can't be expected to keep teaching the same thing 2 years later, just because your lifestyle hasn't been. And I know how hard it is. It's really hard. That's why I asked her from the beginning, because I didn't think it would be that easy.
I think I haven't been teaching beginners for that long because I don't have the same passion as you. I have said to Tamara multiple times, if I could tattoo all day, every day, I'd be a very happy woman. I just love to create the art. Teaching others requires a lot of patience and a lot of perseverance. So I only recently started teaching beginners, and it's a whole new level of patience and perseverance. It really is. But what I've realized is that with students who want to get into this, who have no previous experience, which is completely okay. I didn't have experience in beauty before I did tattooing. I've realized now that I need to offer an entry to brows course before they invest the thousands of pounds to train in cosmetic tattooing. So they need to, I feel, have a level in eyebrow artistry. So it'd be like an entry, but it'd be involving shaping, waxing,
painting,
laminating, because if you can't shape and tint and wax brows, and don't get me wrong, I've only recently just started doing this because I wanted to be able to offer this entry to people who want to get into this, but need that ability to practice drawing without putting a permanent procedure on someone's
Mhm.
face, you know? So it's, yeah.
And it's not just that, it's also, it's exactly like you say, and it's also deciding, do you want to do this? Because there's one thing, like it's exhausting. Like I almost laughed when you just said that you'd be a very happy woman just tattooing and creating the art, because I find that more exhausting, talking to the clients and, you know, being there and then teaching. I find that more exhausting.
See,
like
I don't talk to my clients. That's fine.
Yes, exactly.
That's why I'm not exhausted. I talk too much to my students.
That's the moral of the story. Stop talking to your clients.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's also about learning, do you want to do this? Is it for you? You know, having that engagement with the clients and yeah, seeing how picky some clients are, and do you have the patience for that?
Yeah, because it's not just the tattooing now. It's the growing of the business. It's the accounting. It's the social media. It's the collaborating. It's the training. It's making sure that your skills are always up to date. And, you know, it's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see. This, you know, this flamboyant lifestyle or these beautiful eyebrows on the internet, but no one really sees what goes in behind that. And that's why
exactly
having, like, I do feel that more schools should offer the entry to eyebrow artistry type courses, so that people can see that actually they've not invested thousands of pounds, so they can try and make it work with less pressure. And they can do it without the need for a sink in their house necessarily, or things that we require as tattooists to have in a building or in a property. So
yes, that is if people do it right, because we know how many people don't do it right. But we teach them
And
right.
We send them to Alex.
I think with social media as well, it's really easy for people to look and think, wow, you know, that work looks great. She's really good. He's really good. But they don't see all of the time that I message Karina and say, oh my God, help me. What do you think of these? And she's like, they're fine. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that sort of wobble that you have where you think, should I have picked a slightly darker shade, or should I have gone a bit lighter, or should I have added more warmth? And all of those things that go on in our heads, no one sees on social media. And for me, I remember when I first started, I was nearly put off completely because it was the anxiety. And I, similar to you, Alex, made the same mistake. I tattooed my auntie as one of my models. So I had to look at them all the time. And to be honest, they weren't that bad. And she was over the moon with them. I've only recently removed them this year and re-tattooed again, removed them with laser and started again. But I think everyone just sees the surface and doesn't realise what goes into it to actually get to a point where you're confident. Because it's hard. It's really hard. What would you say, Alex, is one of your kind of biggest challenges that you faced in your permanent makeup career?
I love this question. I thought about it just now as we were chatting, because there's, you know, I don't want people to think that this was all prepped, because it wasn't. I'm gonna, like, you know, go full naked here and say that so I'm obviously not from this country, and I for years felt like an outsider in our industry in permanent makeup. First, it was all that, like I mentioned at the beginning, like people not sharing information with you, whether you asked a question or, you know, you wanted some advice. And I realized that the hard way, that I had to learn by myself. Then seeing how, and this still happens today, and I think it's, now I see it as normality, but I didn't back then. I saw it as a personal, not attack, but how do you say this so that it doesn't sound, it's very cliquey sometimes. And I'd look at someone else's work and think, sure, that's all right, but it's, you know, it's like average. It's nothing like, wow, nothing like that's spectacular. So then why does it get more engagement or more? It's really hard. It was really hard for me for a few years not to compare. And this is one of the hardest things that I've had to do, was work with myself and not compare, and kind of stop looking at it that way. Because I realized, and actually this was not long ago, I'd say at the early stages of the lockdowns, when I did a little bit of self-introspection with a friend of mine who's a coach, a personal and business coach. And it turns out that all of these feelings I had, where I felt like the permanent makeup industry in the UK was keeping me at a distance, was actually caused by me. Because people were not keeping me at a distance. I just never really was brave enough to ask, like, would you like to meet? Or would you like to have a chat? Or would you like to do a live together? Things like this. Because I somehow thought that they will not, because they didn't see me or they didn't like my work in the same way that they liked other people's, where you could see they all kind of cheered each other all the time. So then one day, my coach, I remember, she said, why don't you just ask someone to do a live with you? One of these artists that you call, you say, you think that they will not want to do that. And I said, okay, screw it, I'm going to do it. And what do you think happened? They were like, oh my God, yes.
Who was it?
Oh, yes, I'd be happy to.
Podcast. Who was live?
I don't even remember now. Who did I do my first live with? It was Tess. I did my first live with Tess. And as it appears, Tess was also a really big fan of mine. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Yeah, let's do it, please. And I was so shocked. I was like, are you sure? I'm me and you're you. But yeah, and as it turns out, I was keeping myself at a distance because actually people are really friendly and people are really happy to make new friends. And I think a lot of us actually go through the same anxieties and feelings of being alone. That's why I think events like this, where I met you, Corina, Woolop, whether it's the best championship or not, or the best conference to go to, you know what, at the end of the day, you're also making connections and friends, and it can be a really lonely place in this industry to work by yourself. So not everyone has a work wife like you.
I know. You know what, this was part of the reason why we started the PMU podcast, because we were aware that obviously through teaching and having a social media presence, a lot of people would say to me, oh, I feel quite lonely and quite isolated. And I said to Tamara, look, we're always talking about PMU. Let's just make a podcast. And it took us a while to come around to it. But the same with the way that you spoke to Tess Marty, who I absolutely love. And I know she came to the UK. You know, we have reached out to lots of people on the podcast, and we've been really overwhelmed with the amount of people that have said, yes, they're happy to be part of it. You know, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit tricky sorting out diaries, especially when there are different time zones, because we're waiting for a couple of the American artists to come back to us because of time zones and commitments and whatever. But yeah, it's been really surprising actually that the amount of people have been like, yes. Don't get me wrong, we've had the odd few ignore, which is a real shame, but I appreciate people are busy. I'll just keep bugging them.
Good, do it, because they will say yes at one point. And if they don't, once this podcast grows really big, then they will come asking.
Like, literally, the diary of the CEO, here we come tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think this is again social media and the image we portray, and how false it can be. Because when I decided to reach out to these artists and kind of start, speaking to them, they all kind of said to me in a way, see, we thought you were unapproachable because you seemed a bit like, oh my gosh, she knows so much and I don't think I know what to speak to her. And I was like, really? And I thought, oh, okay. So from that moment, I decided to, you know what, just that's it. From now on, I'm just going to be myself. And I think that was one of my biggest challenges, because people kept asking me, where have you been in all this time? And I was like, here. But you haven't seen me because I was really quiet.
You know what? That's how you came to my attention, actually, because all of a sudden there was this Alex who was very opinionated, also very knowledgeable, but also very against the grain. So one of the first people that made me, you and Monica, start looking at organic pigments really differently. And having done this for that long, I thought I knew a lot, but I literally did not when it came to pigmentology and organics. And now it's something that's a staple in all of my courses, like learn to read the box. Do you understand the differences? Do you understand what the components do?
Yes.
You definitely come across as quite controversial to some. But I love that.
I know.
No, but that's what we need. We need someone who doesn't like flutter around the truth and You show us the results of things, and you show us how things look a few years down the line. And I'm so glad that you did become this person, and you are this person, because I, for one, can say that you've changed my life when it's come to PMU and my knowledge and my understanding of things. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that can say that.
Yeah, I think when I saw your post, Alex, there was a line that I was using, pigment line, and I was like, I'm literally stopping right now. And I think I probably sent it to Karina and was like, we need to stop this now. And I think we've had this chat quite a few times. It's not that there's not really a perfect ink out there, I don't think.
So, it doesn't exist.
There are things that work for some clients and don't work for others, and we're sort of on the fence with what works best, and I just do it based on what the client wants and what I think is going to give them the best healed result later down the line. But I think having those posts, all your stories and stuff, Alex, was just every time I clicked on it, I was like, oh, what's she gonna say?
What is she gonna say next?
Yeah, what am I gonna change next? But it's good because it's good to know.
I get this a lot.
Alex, like, we appreciate it. We appreciate all of the knowledge that you're bringing to the industry, because you do all of the treatments. You do laser removal. You're not, what is it you said? You've been in this industry a while, a zombie? No, what did you say? Not a zombie?
A dinosaur. I can be a zombie too.
But this is knowledge that people didn't previously have, that now people like yourself are speaking out, who have had the time and the experience to find out these things, because it really does help the industry grow.
I think when it comes to pigmentology, I've always had questions. And you're really speaking to my heart now, because a lot of people have said the same thing that I helped change. See, this year I was a little bit more quiet. You said that all of a sudden there was this Alex was really opinionated and outspoken, and I have always been like that. This year I feel like I have been a little bit broken, because I've had some really, really hard conversations with some people in the industry, and it was also at the time when my husband had a health problem, and I just decided to kind of step away a little bit from it, and I have been a bit more quiet this year. But now I decided, why? Because I get messages from artists all over the world saying, Alex, you have really changed my career, and I look forward to everything that you have to say. And whether it's right for me or not, I want to make that decision. But you should keep doing what you do. You should be you. And then I thought, why shouldn't I be me? Even if some people don't like it, then don't look at me. Don't watch, unfollow me. That's fine.
What do you mean you've had hard conversations? People have messaged you because you might have been challenging their particular products or lines?
Yes, that, and also messages like completely unsolicited advice, where, oh, Alex, I think you're coming across as quite hardcore, like really, quite aggressive, or there's opinionated and there's opinionated, like, don't force your opinion on other people. And that did make me take a step back a little bit, because it makes you think, like, okay, am I really? Okay, let me see if that resonates with anything. But I decided that no, if I have something to say, I'll say it, because I have my audience who listens, and if they don't want to listen, then that's absolutely fine. And one of the reasons why I'm not associated or affiliated with any brands is because I want to speak my mind, and I don't want to be forced into, just because I'm in this commitment where I promised I'd make marketing for certain products or certain lines, that wouldn't be true to myself.
I think I remember I did a training course a couple of years ago now, in hair strokes, and the brand that I was using at the time wasn't really great for hair strokes, and on the course they kind of said, like, you shouldn't be using that for hair strokes, but it was very much like, you need to stop using that now and you need to use this. And this, I was a bit like, oh, I don't really know anything about it, I'm not sure I want to use that. I know what to do with what I've got. And then I started to realize, actually, is it because a lot of people are associated with certain brands that they then say, use this, but actually it's not because they believe it's because there's some sort of monetary gain for them. And that's what, you know, again, with Karina, we've had this chat a lot. I don't like that. I'd rather someone just say, Tamara, these are the 3 I recommend. Go away, have a think about it. Pros and cons are here. And you can kind of make your own informative choice. I think when the money gets involved, that's when it gets a bit cloudy, because it's like, are you promoting this because you believe in it, or is it because there's some gain for you?
I can so relate. I have had a lot of proposals and suggestions and invitations to be this or that, or to represent a certain brand. And I may have toyed with the idea, but then when I understood a little bit more about it, then I wanted an out, because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to just promote something if you don't believe in it, or if you don't use it, or if you just I'm just going to change the needle now and just film a couple of seconds of me using this needle, and then I'll move back to, when you're not filming, to the needle that I prefer. I don't think that's right. Because here's the thing, I used to be that person, that artist who would try different things and think, how come it's working for all the other people but not for me? What am I doing wrong? Maybe you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe it's that product. Maybe that product is bad or unfit for purpose.
And also, I think sometimes when there are new products, needles and machines, all of that stuff, you see these images of, you know, look at this, look what so-and-so created. Yeah, but so-and-so's been doing it for 10 years. And, you know, if you were to put images of somebody that's been training for a year, you're probably not going to get as good results. So I think, yes, there is good machines and equipment and all that out there, but actually it's about us and how good we are at tattooing that makes a huge impact as well.
There was a question on one of the forums, on a very big forum these days, where someone was asking about nude colors being tattooed on lips. And that artist asked, how come I see so many very famous, worldwide known artists do this and promote this, but then almost every time I do the same and I use it, and I know my technique may not be fantastic, but all the results that I get are really, they're not very attractive at all. They're not as attractive as what I see online. And I replied and I said, well, what inks do you actually use? And of course, it was the very popular body inks, this brand and that brand. And I said, well, you have to remember that when someone recommends a product, and this is a path or direction that I don't necessarily like that the industry is going towards. They will do anything to get ahead and promote certain ideas or certain products without thinking that everyone will just take it on board and copy paste it, but they know nothing about it or how to use it or how to do it right. And that's something that I don't like. And I told that specific artist, maybe you should explore and look at what else is out there, because it's not just about those particular group of inks, or it's not just about that particular artist who promotes those products. And I see it in my beginners as well, or my other artists. They come, I teach them, and this is exactly what you said, Tamara, about me. I don't just say, oh, this is what I use, the tool, the needle, the ink, that's how I do it, now you do the same. Because it doesn't work like that. I explain why. And I also teach them different ways for different skin types, for different clients. And then you decide what you want to create. But now you have all of this knowledge and all of these tools in your belt. But then they go back, and months later, they send me these photos or videos and say, Alex, what am I doing wrong? It's not working. So I trace it back and I say, okay, give me the technical details. What needle, what brand, what this, what that. And I say, but see, that's the problem. You're trying to use that brand of that needle brand, which is extremely sharp. I never recommended that needle for a specific reason, because it's too bloody sharp and because it doesn't work most of the times. Oh, I just decided to try it because I've seen other artists use it and they say it's great. Well, does it work for you? No. Then throw it away.
Is this on lips we're talking about, or on any style of tattoo?
Any style of tattooing.
Yeah, because you like using, as I you may have changed since then, the Acu needle tips, is that correct? Because they're the more softer ones.
Only for hair strokes.
Okay.
Only for hair strokes. I actually do not think that's a good needle for shaving.
Okay.
I don't. So for hair strokes where you have to go over one area again and again and again, and then the skin gets angry the more you scratch it, essentially. But no, that's not a needle for shaving, in my opinion, because on other skin type, on most skins that are really, say rubbery or hard, or it makes you scratch really hard because you feel like it's not going in. But then it makes you as an artist become more aggressive.
What would you say are your favorite needles for your different procedures?
We're not talking brands, right? We're talking...
We can talk brands because that's what people want to know. Go on, give it to us.
No, they're the classic ones. I think the reason why they're so popular is because they're really good. So obviously I prefer Quadron like everyone else. However, I do not like the pinks. I don't like the pink Quadrons.
Oh, really? You're an old school girl. The brown one?
I'm a brown. Yes, I'm a brown. So I've made it my everything to keep using the browns, even though you can't get them in smaller diameters. But most of the times, if I do need to go lower than 0.35, because you can only find the browns in 0.35, then I'll go for a Mass Pro because it's a really good copy of the Quadron.
I agree.
Runner up, yes. And I do have, so I do have a different, so for example, I do have some Defender needles on stock, but they're so sharp that I would only go for them when nothing else works. So for example, keratosis pilaris on brows, or like a scar on a lip, not necessarily a brow, then I'd go for something as sharp. But I'm not typically a super light-handed artist. I'm not a heavy-handed artist. I used to be, but I've trained myself not to be. I think I'm right there. But working with such sharp needles, for me, does not work. So I prefer there's long taper and there's long taper, right? And I prefer the long taper of Quadron and Mass Pro. Sometimes I use Envy Gen 2 by Tat Soul, but they're also really sharp. For my hair strokes, I go for AcuTip Vertex Nano. They're my go-to. I have been trying other brands, but I'm not convinced yet. Only because some brands have a really big problem with ink flow. It's not just the tip of the needle, it's the build of the cartridge as well. And working with inorganic pigments, you already know, can be quite frustrating because they're really thick. So if I don't have good ink flow, then it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, because your brand that you love in terms of pigments, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's Monaco Ivani's brand.
It is. Now, I'm not saying there are other inorganic brands out there. I have tested a lot of them because I don't want to be stuck to just one brand. You know, what happens if? But it is one of the highly pigmented lines out there. And it has taken over, I believe, so worldwide, the sales of light pigment. So it's because of the simplicity of how to use the colors. I only use 3 colors. I don't use electric blonde at all, but it's the simplicity of those colors, and it's really easy to explain to people. You know, it's pretty straightforward instead of doing 100 mixes in a way. But yes, I prefer inorganic pigments. I have been testing the new Hanafi inorganic pigments.
Oh, how are you
very similar?
Are they as watery as the original range?
They're more watery than the Monaco Ivani range, for sure, but they're also quite cool and ashy. And I understand why they're making them like that, but it's becoming frustrating for a lot of artists to now create, okay, everybody says I shouldn't be using organics because of such and such, but I'm still getting ashy results with inorganics. So like, what do I do? So that's a little bit frustrating for artists as well. There's other brands out there that look a little bit more warm to start with, like Contour. That's a Russian brand. They're really nice to work with, but they are really sheer. They're a true inorganic. They heal as transparent as you'd expect an inorganic to heal. So we have to pick our battles. Sometimes I do use carbon pigments, carbon inks for hair strokes. I'm not going to say no. And I used to say that carbon black is the devil, but no, I've changed my mind. Titanium is the devil.
And also, Alex, do you find that with clients, when my clients come to me, for example, they want a longer lasting result. So it's almost as though they, in their head, they want permanent. And I don't think I've ever had a client come back to me and say, my brows are really ashy. But although you can see it slightly, there are some clients that do heal ashy, and especially with the organics. Do you find that you're sort of having to think about what you think is right and what the client wants? Because sometimes it's two different things. You know, we know that inorganics to us seem better because they fade out and we're not going to end up with them being too ashy over time. It's a bit more flexibility. Whereas the clients are like, I just want something that's going to last, that's not going to wash off, that I don't have to touch up.
Totally. I have my Essex gals who want humongous eyebrows. I'm talking about huge, like half of their forehead tattooed in the shape of an eyebrow. So because I know I'm a responsible artist and I know that trends change and their faces will change. I've had it. I've removed my my permanent makeup quite a few times already and started again. I prefer where I know that I need to do something that I don't necessarily believe in terms of the shape or the size, then I would use something that does fade. It does give them options in the future. When it comes to hair strokes, I'll explain that if you do want hair strokes again, I'm really honest, if you do want hair strokes again in the future, there's only one way we can achieve that. It's by using inks that actually fade, and it gives me the opportunity to do hair strokes again in the future. However, just so you know, they will not last a really long time. Are you happy to come back for a top-up every year? Maybe maximum 18 months if you're lucky, but as opposed to having longevity. Because if I do hair strokes with something that offers you longevity, then we're going to have to go next to a powder brow or laser. And actually, laser should be more normalized, in my opinion. Removal should be more normalized. I do believe that every 5, 6, maybe 7 years, people should just reset button, remove, and do again. Because let's be honest, clients are not patient enough to wait until they fade as much as they should before they get a top up. Once, for example, yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say regarding laser. So I'm at that point where I want mine removed because I feel like they're a bit too saturated. Oh, they look quite nice on this camera, actually. But
they do.
I feel like they're a bit too
you.
But the problem is I want baby number 2 at the moment. So I'm more interested in making baby number 2 than I am about removing my eyebrows, because being pregnant is tough enough, let alone being no eyebrows. That is just a no-go. So what I was going to say is for someone like me who's had an organic brand for a number of years. Prior to that, it was inorganic. Post that, I've personally tattooed orange into my brows, when we were all about fading. Now I don't encourage it as much. So for someone like me who I know I'm going to go 50 shades of who knows what, like that journey just scares the living daylights out of me, where I'm just, I'll just leave them and just tint them. What would you say to someone like me?
I'd say that if you're not that unhappy, then there's no point removing. I think that if you're still happy with the shape and with the style that you have, even if the color isn't that fantastic, it's not a color that's visible from a mile away like the reds used to be or the oranges used to be. It's not a color that looks completely unnatural and very, very obvious. Then keep it that way until you're ready. It's just food for thought. It's just if you ever want to change, or I have my clients who want them really bold all the time. And I say, well, we're at that point where you're not suitable for a top-up yet, and I can definitely not make them darker. But if you do want that fresh look again, then this is the only way. I need to remove some of the old color, which is stuck in there, so I can put more and give you that fresh feeling again. Because once it gets to that point where it's too saturated, we already know that it just doesn't take. It's like an overfilled sponge. It just doesn't take. So then you're wasting your money, my time, and you don't get that fresh feeling for longer than 2 months.
Do you laser Fitzpatrick 4 to 6? Because I've heard conflicting things about this. You do?
I do. But I've made sure that my laser, it's an Nd:YAG, nothing really special about it. I've made sure that it's not as strong because on the same, this is where I get a lot of artists who ask me questions. Oh, Alex, what setting did you use for this, or setting did you use for that? This is not that simple. I usually ask them, do you know the technical parameters of your laser machine? Because they're all so different. It's like driving a Skoda versus a Ferrari or a Porsche. It's completely different. The engine is completely different. One is super mellow and it'll get you there, but much slower, and that one gets you there in 2 seconds. So my laser machine is more mellow. So it may require more sessions overall in terms of until we reach the result that the client wants or that I want for them, but I'm happy that it causes less trauma. So I feel confident in removing FITS 5 and 6 as well. We do a little patch test first, so it's not, I don't just go head on it. But yeah, I don't want to be controversial. I don't wake up every morning and think, oh, what else should I talk about that explodes the permanent makeup industry? It's just how my journey has been. And then I discovered these things, and then I'm like, whoa, people need to know about this. This is so unfair. They've been saying this and they've been saying that. And I think it's unfair how the industry
I just
has
don't
been till now.
what you're doing. I think you should carry on because I look forward to watching your stories. The more controversial, the better.
I know.
Alex, with all those things that you've mentioned, which is obviously quite a lot, so I don't feel like there's one answer to this next question, but I'll ask it you anyway. So in regards to advice starting out in the permanent makeup industry, and into pigmentology, what advice did you feel that you didn't get that you would give to someone else, or you may now give to your students?
I would say, don't fall for the image. Don't fall for the glitz and glam. This is hard work. What I wasn't told is that it requires an open mind. It's not just about, oh, I select the person that I prefer or the person that I like or I've been following for ages. If you don't see the artist that you're planning to learn from, if you don't see their work evolving, their career evolving and changing to the better and admitting that they made mistakes. One of my biggest pet peeves is all of these artists that come and say, oh no, my work has always been flawless. Like, I don't understand why so many people made mistakes. Excuse me? You were a beginner at one point as well. You may have had better training than we did 10 years ago because now you're coming into the industry where the level of education has improved. But is that better training? Is that better education? Or is it just smoke and mirrors? I think our industry is in a really good place now in terms of leveling up and upskilling, but there's also so much conflicting information out there. I think artists are confused in knowing who to choose and are they making the right choice. And I'd hate to be a beginner at this stage, even though it was really hard for me 10 years ago or 9 years ago when I really delved into it and I was by myself. But I'd hate to be in this situation as well, where I'm receiving like 100 different advice. And then I think, so which one? Because I don't even understand half of it. So just keep an open mind and don't fall for the glitz and glam. I did.
That's a really good message, because I definitely say to all of my students, even myself, I mute a lot of stories or a lot of posts from artists, because I think, me, like anybody, I'm normal. I compare, or I think, why does their work look like that? What am I doing differently? And how can I get that? And then I get lost in trying to create this level of perfection when actually, it's not the best way to evolve as an artist. So yeah, it's very easy to fall for the glitz and the glitz. Yeah, I definitely recommend like muting posts and stories from too many different types of styles and artists, especially whilst you're just setting out and trying to find your feet.
It's making people choose sides, and I don't think that's right. Like on pigmentology, oh, inorganics are better, carbon inks are better. I don't think they are. I think they each fit a purpose. There's no perfect pigment line out there. That's one of the reasons why I don't have my pigment line, because I've discovered that it's really, really difficult to create that. So if it's not nowhere near perfection, then I don't want it. It's very hard for artists nowadays, I think. And it's like when we have kids, you have to let people make mistakes as well, because they will learn much faster and much quicker that way. And I think it's scaring a lot of people. I may be one of those artists that has scared a lot of artists into not using certain brands, but I also like to be very honest. So, and I'll say, yeah, I did it as well. And I don't do it anymore because of this.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, though, Alex, is that you make these comments, but you back it up with everything. It's not just don't use this. It's it's an in-depth. I remember, I'm sure it was your page. Forgive me if I've got the wrong page, but I'm sure I screenshotted it and sent it to Karina. And you did or your students have sent into you like a paper A4 copy of like all the different inks, and you lasered them all. And I did the same because I trained in laser at the beginning of the year, and I got all my inks. And I thought, no, I need to know what happened. So now with my clients, when they come to me and we talk about the option of inorganic or organic, I do say to them, look, this is potentially what could happen if you want to go down that route. These are the risks, or these are the side of, this is what could potentially happen. And this is what would happen with the inorganics. And I think for them to know that, I mean, they still want permanent, but it's good because you have a good understanding. And I think things like that are just really helpful because you do back it up with all the information.
I agree. I try to back it up with as much as I can.
I use Tamara's laser sheet in my training and say to people, look, so T, my work wife, does laser, and this is how different pigments look under laser and how they respond. Because again, I think it's really important. I do want to train in laser, but haven't done it yet. But I do think it's really important for people to see what they're putting into people's skin. And I always say to people, what you're doing is life-changing. So you want to change their lives for the better, not for the worst. So you need to understand what you're actually doing, right down to what you're putting into people.
Exactly. One of the most common, let's say comment that I get is every time I talk about laser and how inks laser is that, well, we shouldn't be looking at it that way. We should be looking at learning how to do it correctly and how to use these inks correctly, and then we wouldn't need removal. And I say, fair enough, sure, because you may be at that level, but so many people aren't, and so many people are going to make mistakes. And it's like in medicine, it's like medication. They have very good results and very positive outcomes, but they can also have serious repercussions. And it's the same with inks, and it's the same with everything that we do. So I think it's a really big topic, this pigmentology, but as long as more of us stay true to ourselves and don't fall for the whole monetary gain, being associated with certain brands. Like I have my days, Corina, where I think, you know what, if I would have let myself be associated with such and such, I would have been much further than where I am now, because it is really damn hard to grow by yourself and organically. But then I can also be really proud at the end of the day of everything that I've achieved by myself with no one else's help. So really hard not to compare. I guess that's part of my advice as well.
Yeah.
For beginners.
Well, Alex, I just want to throw out there our last question. We love this one because it's a little bit of a hot fire round, and it kind of puts you on the spot a little bit. But if you were deserted on a desert island and you could only take 3 things with you, so one being a needle, one being a pigment or a pigment color, because we know that you love Monica Ravani's, and one being a machine, what would you take with you?
I would take a Magnum. I would take Monica Ivani Absolute Brown, and the tour. I know it's one of the cheapest machines out there, but it's still the best in my whole collection. It's the one that I go for all the time.
The Mars Tour is still your favorite machine?
Still my favorite, I think, because it's a direct hit machine. I do not like machines with a soft hit, and I just prefer it. It makes really, really round, tiny pixels, and everybody asks me, how are your pixels so round? It's the machine. No, I love it. I think I don't think that machines should be as expensive as some brands are. Because as we've seen from other brands, it's totally possible to have a very universal, versatile machine and not cost a kidney.
Oh,
So,
I definitely shed a kidney on the first ever machine I bought. Oof.
Me too.
Still paying that Porsche back these days, but yes, now sits in my drawer and does nothing.
I know. I sold it on eBay. Thankfully, someone wanted to buy it. But yeah, a Magnum, Absolute Brown, and my Master.
Quadron Magnum.
Yes, Quadron.
Good
Quadron
choice.
Magnum. I think it's what everyone uses.
So, Alex, obviously tomorrow and I know where to find you, but if somebody does want to get in touch following on from today's podcast, or if they want to follow you, can you just let us know what your socials are, please?
Yes, Instagram, that's the most popular, alex.pmu.academy. Yeah, you'll definitely find me because there aren't a lot of Alexes out there that do permanent makeup and also teach. And on Facebook, I still have my full name, Alex Mechenici, but that's harder to spell for people. So I think best way is to find me on Instagram, and from there, there's different links to my website, my Facebook, to everything else.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've really, really, really appreciated having you on board. And yeah, hopefully we can get this episode out well soon.
I am really thankful for being here. Thank you for having me. I don't think it was as controversial as people expect me to be, but because it is your podcast and it's not mine, I decided to, not mention a lot of names and brands, and because I don't think it's fair. Even though sometimes bad publicity is still publicity, but it's not my podcast, so I'm playing it cool. But yeah, if people,
they can just message you, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and it was such a pleasure to meet you as well, Tamara.
Thank you, Alex, and you, Karina's work wife.
My wife.
We only